Hello my friends, I'm Josiah, and this is my recording studio tour video, 2018, starring Josiah. So I didn't really feel like being on camera for this one, so here's some footage of my kitties. The one in front, the black one, his name is Edward, and he's my best friend and my son and the perfect life form. The one behind him is Alphonse, and he's fat. I have a third kitty named Hughes, or the Goob as I call him, but he hates being in the window, and I tried to get him to sit in the window so he could be in the video, but he really didn't want to. So here is some footage of that happening. So I just went around my studio and shot a few clips of various pieces of gear. I'm going to take a minute or two for each one and just kind of explain what those things are and how I incorporate them in my workflow as a musician and recording artist and YouTube boy. Alright, so I'm going to start off with my guitars, which are the most heavily featured items in my videos. And first up is the thing that I get asked the most about in my videos. It is my acoustic guitar, my Taylor 214 L3. This guitar is the finest acoustic guitar that I've ever played, and somehow, I don't know how it happened, but I found this thing in a pawn shop, and I knew someone who knew the owners, and they allowed me to take the guitar and then make payments on it, which was awesome because I think it was like $900 at the time, which I mean, that's about on par for what this thing would go for if you look it up online or whatever. The feel of the neck and the action on the guitar, I have not before or since played anything that plays as well and as comfortably as this guitar. The Taylor 214 L3, I guess, is like something model of the 214 series, and this one in particular is, it has like a subtitle to it. It's something like Worship Leader or Worship Master or something like that. And it has this dove on the headstock. I'm not a particularly religious person, but I think it looks pretty cool, and it's kind of like, you know, the stars aligned, divine intervention, or whatever you want to call it, allowed me to get this guitar, so it's kind of like a nice little reminder of how I came in possession of this. Alright, next up is my Fender Precision Bass, or a P-Bass, as they are colloquially referred to. This is a 1976 Precision Bass. Actually, I got this bass from the same pawn shop that my Taylor came from. So I went back to the pawn shop and they had this precision bass, and then they had a Fender Jaguar bass that was candy apple red, but this one just was really nice and it played really nicely, so it was a good buy. I just love that sunburst color, I don't know. It reminds me of like the 70s, which I was not around for. Next up is my Fender Jazzmaster. I got this thing last summer. It's a 2015. It's not really anything too special. I would really like to have like a classic one similar to my bass, and I really wish that it had the block inlay on the fretboard, but I bought this guitar because last summer I was in the middle of recording an album, and I really needed that classic Fender tone for a couple of songs, and so I went ahead and bought this thing. And then I decided that that album needed a lot of work, like such that I don't think that I could do it on my own in my little studio, so I put that whole album on the shelf, recorded a couple of songs with this guitar, and it's basically just kind of sat on my guitar rack ever since then, but I like it. It looks cool. Again, I had to have the sunburst color because I'm garbage. And finally, my Gibson SG. I've had this guitar since I was 17. My dad got it for me for my 17th birthday, I think it was. Maybe it was Christmas. I don't know. Anyways, I've had it for like 13 years. And it's been just a really good like workhorse kind of guitar. So it's a Gibson SG Special. I think, no it's not, it's a Standard. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so it's a Gibson SG Standard. It's taken a bit of a beating in its life. It was in a car wreck when I was like 18. I crashed a car into a small creek, and water got into the guitar case and kind of like messed up the finish on the body a little bit, but it didn't like affect the electronics at all, which I was thankful for. And also around that time when I was like 18, I put this stupid inscription, I guess you could call it, on it. It's just some really edgelord shit that I thought was cool when I was 18, and I don't have the heart to take it off. Okay, now, this is one of my favorite things that I own right now. It is my Korg DW8000 synthesizer. I picked this thing up actually about almost exactly 1 year ago. I found a dude on Craigslist who had it, and it was listed for 300 bucks, which is a pretty damn good deal for this. I believe this was manufactured in 1985. I'd been wanting a synth for a while, and this one seemed to be on par with like a Yamaha DX7, which is what I was looking for, but those are like really expensive, like $700-800 bucks for one of those. So I found this and I looked up some reviews on it, and it seemed like it was a really good bang for the buck. And I got home and plugged it in and just had so much fun just fooling around with it. In fact, the night that I got it home was when I came up with the chord progression for Dead Moons, which, even though it's only 2 chords, it's still like one of my favorite things. And I haven't even like scratched the surface on how to use this thing. I've kind of just played around with like the stock patches that are built into it. You can really appreciate how lazy I am, and I don't dust my instruments. Some of these look really gross, especially this keyboard. You're probably looking at like a close-up shot that I filmed, and it looks really gross. It is covered in dust, so I apologize for that. And this is my Yamaha P80 electric keyboard / piano. This is the keyboard that you see in every single one of my videos where I'm doing like a solo piano piece. The action on this thing is really nice. It's probably the best action that I've ever felt on a keyboard, but the sample rate and the quality of the samples isn't super awesome. It sounds decent, but it's not like amazing. But it gets the job done, and the action's really nice, and it's generally just pleasant to play. And then I have my M Audio Axiom 49 MIDI keyboard. This is the thing that I use for pretty much any like composition stuff that I'm doing. I don't use it as any sort of like a performance tool. It's just for like figuring out chords or recording MIDI notes into my DAW and then arranging them. It's pretty much strictly for composition purposes. So, I don't know. It's a good little keyboard. I like the lights. So now we're going to get into my workstation, and we'll start with my audio interface, which is a PreSonus Fire Studio. It has a shitload of inputs on it, way more than I would ever use. I basically just used the first 2, and then one time I recorded drums and I used the rest of the mic inputs. But I bought this thing back in, I think 2015 or so, because my old PreSonus Firebox that I used for everything for like, I don't even know, it was like 8 years that thing went. It started like popping and crackling, and I think it was just time to take it out behind the barn, and you know. So I actually, when that happened, I ended up getting a, let's see, what was it? It was a Focusrite Scarlett, it was like a Fire something or other. It was like the bigger interface that was a Firewire input. Anyways, I tried that thing for like a couple of weeks, and I really didn't like the preamps on it. And the one thing about the Firebox is the preamps were awesome. You could get a lot of punch out of those things. So I did some research, and I found out that PreSonus has a newer line of interfaces. I think they're called the Fire Pod or something. And I was gonna get one of those, but they're pretty expensive. And then I found on eBay someone had this older Fire Studio, and it was like 130 bucks or something. The listing said that it wasn't used. It was like new or whatever in the box and all that. So I ordered it, got it here, and it would not work with my Windows 7 computer. So I was like, what the heck? And I did some research, and I found out that the firmware was not compatible with Windows 7, only Windows XP. So I had to like install Windows XP as a partition on my hard drive, and then like plug it in and then flash the firmware on the interface itself. It was a nightmare, and it took me several days to like troubleshoot it, but I did get it, and it's worked like a charm ever since. So, I mean, I can't complain too much. It was kind of a gamble, but it went in my favor in the end. So yeah, it's a really good interface. I like it a lot. I don't even use it to most of its capability most of the time, but it's good. For studio monitors, I use Yamaha MSP5s. These are just kind of just run-of-the-mill 5-inch studio monitors. They're pretty good. They're not amazing, but they get the job done. It was one of those situations where these just popped up on Craigslist for like $100 or something, and I needed some monitors, and it seemed like a good deal, so this is what I used. But yeah, these have a pretty good, just flat sound, and they work really good for my purposes. I wouldn't mind like upgrading to like some nice like HS8s or something, but these work good for now, and they're good. Things are good, and music is bad. And here's just a wide shot of my workspace. Yeah, it's a disaster. I actually straightened it out before making this video, so that just goes to show how much of a disaster it is and I am. My desk is a Z-Line Designs Cyrus workstation, which I guess these are like really notorious for the glass, like the glass part of it shattering. So I'm just waiting on that to happen. As far as my workflow goes, I have two PCs. One is kind of just basic specs, and that's designated as just my music recording workstation, and like I do all my mixing and stuff on that one. And then I have a second one that has much better components in it. It has like a Ryzen 1700, GTX 1080, what else? 16 gigabytes of RAM, and I do any sort of like video editing or like really processor intense things on that one, like playing video games. It's the computer that I play video games on. It's the computer that I lose PUBG on. It's the computer that I beat Naveed at Rocket League on every day. And Austin too. For my digital audio workstation, or DAW, I use Reaper. Reaper is a free-ish, semi-free DAW, which I use and a lot of my friends use. It's a very, very good program. If you're thinking of just getting started, I highly recommend you go check out Reaper. It's not exactly free, like it's like you download it and you get a trial period, and then you're supposed to pay for it after that, but you technically don't have to. But a license is only like $60, and it's an awesome program. I highly recommend it. I have been using it since August 2016. The first song that I ever did in Reaper was, I think it was Effigy, right around that time. Before that I used Cubase 5, and I also love Cubase as well, but I had no trouble and no regrets switching to Reaper. It's just super easy to use, very streamlined, and I highly recommend it. For distribution, I use a service called DistroKid, which is basically a service for getting your music into digital stores like iTunes, Amazon Music, Google Play and whatnot, all of those. It also gets your music on Spotify, which is very important in my opinion. So pretty much you just sign up for a membership with them. There are 3 membership tiers. One is $20 and it lets you upload unlimited music. The second one's like $35 and that's what I have. And I can upload unlimited music as well as check detailed statistics on like who's listening to my music and like what is being listened to and all that. It's super helpful. And the third tier is $80, and that's basically just for like labels who are managing like a lot of artists. As far as cover licensing goes, which I'm sure many of you are interested in knowing about, DistroKid has an annual license fee of $12 per year per song. So like with me, I wanted to get my most recent album into iTunes and whatnot. I think there was like 12 songs on there, so that was like $12 per track. So it was like $120 or whatever. So as long as your sales are covering that cost, it's not a big deal. If you want to upload like a ton of music, like in my case, I have 3 albums worth of old covers that it's not worth it for me to upload it to DistroKid because it would be really expensive. So that wasn't really financially viable for me. So I just picked the most recent one and did that one. But the upshot is if you pay that $12, you're completely covered as far as licensing, any sort of like copyright issues, they will have your back. I have a sponsorship set up through DistroKid. So if you're interested, you can get 7% off your first year membership by going to this link that I'm putting in the description. My personal experience with DistroKid has been awesome. It's been very smooth, there's been no issues. When my new album is finished, and hopefully by the end of the summer, when my album is done, I will be uploading it through DistroKid and sending it out to all the digital stores that way. I can't recommend these guys enough. If you're wanting to go the legit route and not risk, copyright infringement or jail time, then use DistroKid. Okay, microphones. So my main vocal microphone that I have been using for almost 3 years now is a Rode NTK. It's actually the microphone that I'm using to record this voiceover. I got this thing used on eBay, and it's a very good microphone. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know a ton about microphones, but as far as I can tell, this is a really good microphone and I like it a lot. Next up is my AKG C414B. I have 2 of these, and I typically use them for recording instruments, mainly guitar. It kind of depends on the song though. If I'm doing kind of like background guitar, I will use this microphone, or really just anything that it's not like front and center, I will use this microphone. And then finally is my Rode NT4. This is a stereo microphone, so it takes 2 mic cables that plug into 2 different mic inputs, and then you create a stereo signal in your DAW, which gives you a really cool stereo effect. And if you know how to make use of that, it is a good microphone. I typically will use this microphone if I'm doing like a solo guitar piece, like something where the guitar is very front and center. All of my original guitar pieces I've used this microphone on. It's a really good microphone if you know what you're doing, which I'll admit that I don't really, but I kind of do. And then finally, I just took a couple of random shots of things in my room. Here's my little bust of Frédéric Chopin, who is my favorite musician who has ever lived in the history of musicians. Apparently this is a shot of some badges from various conventions that I've been to. I'm not really doing conventions anymore. I don't know, they just kind of stress me out. There's a lot of people around, and I don't know. It's good to see friends and stuff, but it tends to be like a little overwhelming for me. So I've been scaling back my convention presence a bit. Not that I'm swearing them off or anything, I'm just not gonna be going as often. Except for Portland Retro Gaming Expo, which is like 2 hours away from my house. So I am gonna do that one every year, and I plan on being there this year as well. And I have a lot of video games. I wouldn't call myself a collector, but I've sort of just like amassed all these games over the years. And like 80% of my collection are games from when I was a kid, and I just never had the heart to sell them over the years. So I've held on to them all. But I don't know, I'm definitely not an active collector. I just like video games, I guess. I'm a 30-year-old man, and there's Super Smash Brothers posters and Wind Waker posters and video games all over my room. Because I'm an adult. And that's what adult rooms look like. I'm not going to go into extreme detail about my game collection. I suppose that if you're really curious and there's a demand for it, I'd probably be down to make a video talking about my game collection. I guess if you want that, let me know in the comments, and maybe I'll do it sometime. So yeah, that about wraps up my 2018 studio tour. I didn't go through every single piece of equipment in my entire studio. I just kind of tried to cover like the important stuff. If you have questions about other pieces of gear that you've seen in my videos, or anything pertaining to my music, recording, writing, anything else that I may have missed or that you're curious about, feel free to leave me a comment and I will try to answer as many as I can. So if you would like to know things, ask me things and I will tell you things. I am planning on doing another like state of the channel like update video here pretty soon, like the ones where I walk through the woods with my camera and ramble, because there's some things that I would like to discuss, like why am I not really doing video game music anymore, and what's going on with this full-length album that I'm working on. So yeah, ask me questions if you want to know things, I'll answer in the comments. My album will be out, and keep a lookout for another walking through the woods and talking video soon. But thanks for watching. I hope that this video answered some of your questions, and I'm gonna end with just some footage of my kitty, or kitties. I'm not sure what I'm gonna show, but there will be cats, I promise. You're probably looking at them right now. You're probably looking at Edward, and he's probably being super cute right now.